Hello everyone, it's Old Guardian here. I'm proud to present my first meta report or best decks video for March of the Lich King meta. The first balance patch came so quickly that I didn't even have time to make a video, and then there was a balance patch and Shock Speeder and Side Naturals were nerfed and meta changed a little bit again. But now we might be at the point where we have a bit of a grasp on what is good and what is not in March of the Lich King. So even though there's a lot of tentative results here, I still already wanted to do this because this gives you a pretty good idea of the overall meta and of the 15 best decks in the game at the moment. Overall, I would take a look at this meta. I mean, it consists of kind of layers, because the initial layer was that huge popularity of Blood Death Knight. So Blood Death Knight, boom, everyone was playing Blood Death Knight. Well, Blood Death Knight got countered pretty hard by Ramp Druid. So boom, lots of people playing Ramp Druid. And then both of those are getting countered by Deathrattle Rogue. So boom, lots of people playing Deathrattle Rogue. And as you progress through the ladder, you can currently see these layers between ranks. There's the layer of Blood Death Knight at the bottom, then there's the layer of Ramp Druid in the middle, and then there's the layer of Deathrattle Rogue near the top. And as you progress through these layers, the deck that you should use is, of course, should a little bit be different, because different tools work for these different situations. And this is not all, because we're all still waiting for what's going to happen next. So more things are going to happen. With that in mind, so these top 15 decks, they're not necessarily in this order, depending on where you are on the ladder, but overall these seem to be the 15 best decks in the game at the moment. So let's start with number 15, Big Spell Mage. Big Spell Mage, I mean, if you don't have a lot of new cards, but you do have one important new card, which is Astalo Bloodsword, then Big Spell Mage is still a perfectly fine deck, and you can use this to climb the ladder. It's strong against Blood Death Knight, it's weak against Ramp Druid, so if you're in that Ramp Druid pocket, ouch. And against Deathrattle Rogue, the matchup is actually pretty much exactly 50-50, so you're even against that one. At number 14 we have the mage deck that is doing a little bit better at the moment, which is the Spooky Arcane Mage. At least it is doing a little bit better in that Deathrattle Rogue pocket, because this is a really fun deck. It's really built to counter Rogue. Deathrattle Rogue, Miracle Rogue, I mean, you just freeze stuff and then you shoot back with those arcane spells. So freeze and shoot, and boom, they will explode. Uses those spooky spells, uses some freeze effects and stuff like that. Doesn't even use the Mage Hero card, so really not your grandfather's spooky mage, but uses those arcane spells and Egwin the Guardian to get some spell damage, and then you can just boom boom boom. Deck number 13 is Miracle Rogue. Miracle Rogue is still a perfectly valid deck. I mean, you have Necrolord Draga, you have Sinstone Graveyard, you can just blow people out of the game. However, Miracle Rogue has some issues. Well, first of all, Deathrattle Rogue seems to be the superior rogue archetype, and you're unfavored in that one. And then there is an other threat that has risen that's really countering Deathrattle Rogue, and coincidentally also counters Miracle Rogue, and that is Control Priest. Yeah, Control Priest is a real deck. I'll talk about it more a little bit later. But you can still blow people out of the game with Miracle Rogue just fine. And at number 12 we have Blessed Priest. Blessed Priest also, there's a lot of these decks in this meta where you just do some stuff and then you have the boom, huge swing turn, and now you have a giant minion that kills the opponent next turn or something like that. Turn 4, turn 5, turn 6, and boom, game over. And Blessed Priest definitely falls into that category with its Radiant Elementals, its health buffs, and its Bless. So boom, killing people fast. But also just not having that many threats. So then you're up against the control deck that can handle a threat, Blood Death Knight, Control Priest, and ouch, now you're hurting. Very polarized. The 11th best deck in the game is a Death Knight deck, and it is the only Death Knight deck that has made the list. As much as I love playing with Blood Death Knight is hovering at around 50% at best, and it appears that Frost Death Knight is able to reach something like 53% or so clearly better. And Frost Death Knight, again, you have those freeze effects. So Frost Death Knight has a pretty decent shot against Rogue. And Frost Death Knight, first of all, it was built like this 30 card list, and then it tried to do combo-ish stuff. And now it's being built as a 40 card list using Prince Renatal, using that additional health that Renatal generates you, so that you're able to survive a little bit longer. You pop off a little bit later because you have a less consistent deck, but that's still going to be enough for specifically what it's built for, and that is to beat rogues. Number 10 is the No-minion Demon Hunter with the Soul Eater Scythe, and in this case Soul Eater Scythe eating Chase Darkweaver, Artificer, Cymox, and a Silvermoon Arcanist. So that then you can infuse your Cymox, because even though you're kind of no-minion, then actually those spells that you have, Fel'Drai Warband and Deal with the Devil, are going to summon a bunch of minions, especially Fel'Drai Warband, which summons 4 minions with Rush, and you only need 5 minions to infuse Cymox, so infusing Cymox is pretty trivial actually with this deck. And then Chase, you have a lot of Fel spells, Chase is going to repeat those, and Silvermoon Arcanist if you want some spell damage and you want to do some bigger unleash Fels and stuff, then that's going to be perfectly fine. No-minion Demon Hunter is just an overall strong, high tempo, high pressure deck. It's not actually the best Demon Hunter deck though, but it is competitive. At number 9, Imp Warlock, no new cards, no problem. Imp Warlock, the list has not changed by a single card. This is actually the exact same list that I recommended last in the previous expansion. In the final video of Castle Natria, the final meta video of Castle Natria, recommended this list of Imp Warlock, and it still gets the job done, even with Sire Denatrius. Just a fine, aggressive deck. At number 8, we have another carryover from Castle Natria, Aggro Druid, although Aggro Druid can optionally use one new card, because you can use Lingering Zombie. You don't have to. You can still use Beaming Sidekick instead, and you will still be fine. I mean, you can do that. It doesn't really matter. The performance is like within half a percentage point, so given the sample sizes, it's actually a little bit uncertain still whether Lingering Zombie is even an improvement. But looking into individual card performance, it does look like Lingering Zombie is doing relatively well in this list, so I think there's a good chance that Lingering Zombie is an actual improvement. Aggro Druid, also super budget deck, only uses common and rare cards, not even an epic is needed, which is really rare nowadays because in the current meta, all the power comes from epics and from legendaries. So I'm actually being contemplating whether I would have to add a couple of epics to budget lists, because that would enable some new budget decks which just cannot be built without a single epic card. But Aggro Druid can be, and Aggro Druid, it started really weak when the expansion started because everyone's playing Blood Death Knight, and Blood Death Knight is miserable matchup for Aggro Druid. But then when people started to play other decks like Ramp Druids and Deathrattle Rogues, then Aggro Druid was like, yeah, let's go. And boom, Aggro's back. At number 7, we have the Curse Imp Warlock. The Curse variant of Imp Warlock, a little bit slower, has still imps, can still blow you out of the game, but also has a bit of a longer term plan in case all of those boards are getting cleared, and that is to kill people with curses. And that means that Curse Imp Warlock is stronger against the slower decks like Ramp Druids and Blood Death Knights, and you can see where this is going. Blood Death Knight super popular, Ramp Druid super popular, Curse Imp Warlock, yeah, strong. Also doesn't need any new cards. This again is exactly the same list that I recommended in the last Castle Natria video, and it is still doing fine. But don't worry, there are also new things around. Well, can you really call this a new thing? I suppose you can. I mean, it's Evolve Shaman. And all it took to enable Evolve Shaman was one new card, Prescience. And now you cast that one, and it draws you some big minions, in particular Goldshire Gnolls and Sea Giants. You can discount them, you can play them, then you can evolve them, and just do what Evolve Shaman has been doing for years, now with just a little bit different cards. Also, pretty fun thing, because sometimes you face these Deathrattle Rogues, and well, you have Primordial Waves, so you can actually get rid of their Reborn Deathrattle minions, although they might become strong minions still, so it's not a surefire way to succeed. But you have some tools to fight back against various things, because Primordial Wave also devolves the opponent's minions. Then you have Wildpaw Cavern, so you also have some freeze effects. So you can actually do quite a bit with Evolve Shaman while also advancing your own game plan. At number 5 we have the current best Paladin deck, and the best Paladin deck is a pure, I guess I should say pure aggro Paladin. Because it's a pure Paladin, but it really relies on stuff like Sanguine Soldier, stuff like Seal of Blood. Stoneheart Vindicator is crazy in this deck. Stoneheart Vindicator draws Seal of Blood, okay, boom, let's go. And draws Order in the Court, well, boom, let's go as well. Draw some Light Rays and Countess and Blood Crusader, and then turn 6, play the Crusader, play the Countess, play some Light Rays. Wow, that's a big swing turn. And then you still have a bunch of legendary minions coming, and wow. Yeah, just pretty sweet and aggressive deck. Again, like many decks in the current meta, having those super big swing turns. And the 4th best deck in the game at the moment is Deathrattle Rogue, which is the latest hype deck. And yeah, this deck, that Scourge Illusionist, there's three variants of Deathrattle Rogue in the game. There's one that it's like a Deathrattle Miracle hybrid, because it still uses Sinstone Graveyard, so it makes those stealthy ghosts which are undead, which can be buffed by Invincible. And then there's a list that goes all in on Invincible, doesn't use the Graveyard. And then there is this list. This originates from Korea, I believe. It has Burning Blade Acolytes, it has Infectious Ghouls, it has Invincible, so it has the widest variety of minions, meaning it has the most consistency, because it's going to get some of those minions every single time, and then it can just do interesting and potentially broken things, and many copies of Deathrattle minions. Like I've seen boards full of Invincible, and yikes, it can really get scary. However, that particular deck is countered really hard by this deck, for example. Coming in at number 3 we have Control Priest, and this is not your grandfather's Control Priest, or maybe this is exactly your grandfather's Control Priest, because this is no Quest Priest, this is a priest deck that wins through sheer power of despair, and I guess Plague Spreaders, and then in addition to so let me get this straight, Plague Spreaders are going to turn all of your opponent's minions eventually into Plague Spreaders. You're going to get a lot of Plague Spreader Deathrattles off. And then you have Mida, Pure Light. So with Mida Pure Light, that means that you're going to have access to infinite minions, your opponent is only going to have Plague Spreaders, and then you just win the game with the Cyrella hero power and that Mida, and yeah, pretty painful stuff. And then perhaps a little bit of a controversial choice, because second best deck in the game, I'm still saying Beast Hunter. Yeah, Beast Hunter numbers, they look good in some cases and bad in others, because it has weakness against Deathrattle Rogue. And on higher ranks, Deathrattle Rogue is really popular, so Beast Hunter numbers start to go down. But on the vast majority of ladder, it's still a perfectly fine deck. Also, by the way, the list, not a single card has changed. This is exactly the same list that I recommended back in Castle Natria. And why not? What is there not to like? Beast Hunter is like, hey, new expansion, okay, cool. Hey, Sardenetra's nerfed on, fine, I guess. And it just keeps rolling. It's really, out of all Hearthstone decks, Beast Hunter right now is perhaps the most well-rounded. It's just, it can defend, it can apply pressure, it can just do a little bit of everything. It's jack of all trades, master of none. And in the current meta, that's still pretty strong in most cases. And finally, the best deck in the game. Can you really call it the best deck in the game? Because we don't even have one unified meta, because we have these layers, the Death Knight layer and the Druid layer and the Rogue layer. But Quest Demon Hunter is... this deck is scary. You have the quest, you get some discounts, you have spell damage minions, and then you have stuff like Unleash Fel, and you have stuff like Chase. And then you can just boom, 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 boom. You will get a bunch of attack buffs as well. But sometimes I've even seen this deck deal 40 damage to face while the hero has been frozen, so you have not been able to use the hero. It's totally bonkers what this deck can do sometimes. And yeah, this looks like the latest and greatest, maybe. But there's still a lot of stuff going on because the meta is so unsettled, and also archetype recognition on HS Replay, where I go through all the stats, that's also a little bit unsettled, because, for example, Quest Demon Hunter and No-minion Demon Hunter are grouped as the same archetype on HS Replay. You can't tell them apart. So you can't separate their statistics. And then you have to go deck by deck in order to try to build a picture of each separately. And Yeah, there's still a lot of stuff going on like that, and we'll have to wait until we get better archetype recognition, until we get more data. But overall, I still believe that these 15 decks are the best 15 decks in the game at the moment. I just don't know the order for sure. And Quest Demon Hunter, there's a bunch of decks right now that can do really, really broken stuff. Shockspeeder was nerfed. Arcane Hunter was one of the decks that could do really broken stuff. But there's a bunch that still remain. And we'll have to wait and see whether Blizzard is going to respond to that in some way or not. Probably they are. They're pretty active in balancing nowadays. But anyway, best decks in the game right now, these 15. Thank you for watching. Click like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and a special thanks to all of my Patreon supporters, YouTube members and Twitch subscribers who make all of these videos possible.